It's going to take a really clean game and some big clutch moments if you're going to be able to beat the Georgia Bulldogs. Obviously, one of the better teams that Mississippi State is going to face without question this season. The number 5 team in the country currently, and a team that has only lost once, a 3-point loss at home to Alabama. They got down big in that game, but came back and were in it, late in the fourth quarter. Bama was able to make the plays to put it away. You know, kind of a Georgia team that does not look as impressive as everyone has expected, but they still find ways to win. They found a way to win at Tennessee. They found a way to win against Auburn. They found a way against Ole Miss. They found a way against Florida. And I think they've been trailing in a lot of these games at halftime. That's the other thing is like every single week they're down at the half, and they just in the fourth quarter, second half, everything clicks for them and they find a way. You want to talk about a team that is clutch? Georgia is clutch. And I think everything I just talked about don't beat yourself and then make the key plays in key moments. This Georgia team, I think, really is a prime example of that. It's not that they do anything all that sexy. It's that they find ways to step up in big moments. Now, there was one game where they weren't able to ultimately step up, and that was against Christian's Alabama team. Christian, just going back to that game, I mean, we don't have to look at it from what did Bama do, but more just what did you see from Georgia in that ball game, or what have you seen from them overall? Because I know you've watched them beyond that game as well.
I think they're a good team. I mean, this was, I think in that game specifically, being at home, obviously you got the home crowd behind you, so that helps. They were able to play not a 4-quarter defense, but at least a second half defense. And it looked like for a little while they were crawling back, but they didn't have enough left in the tank to get the job done. They shut Alabama down in that second half. It was 24-14 in that game at halftime. Alabama was up by 10. Georgia lost by basically a field goal. Not literally, but I mean 3 points. They were favored by 2.5. They they committed penalties that kind of killed them in this game. Alabama had more time of possession, more yardage, didn't turn the ball over. Georgia, I believe, had one what like a fumble recovery, or maybe it was like they couldn't get the fourth. I don't remember what the turnover was, but overall, man, they got some second half momentum, but they didn't have enough to basically come back and win the whole thing. And that's really what it is. You have to, if you're Mississippi State, how do you get past Georgia? You have to get off to a big start. And I think especially with defense, like you got to force Gunnar Stockton to make mistakes. I mean, we talk about Carson Beck and his interceptions for Georgia last year. Gunnar Stockton, it's not really. Let me see how to put it. He's not turning the ball over like Carson Beck did. However, he can look pedestrian at times and make the wrong decisions and not convert when he needs to, or make the right throws, or force him to run. He's not the most mobile quarterback, whatever. So I guess just having the right mindset going into this game if you're Mississippi State, kind of like what Alabama had. I mean, you talk about Alabama was able to win that on the road. Not a lot of people picked Alabama to go into Athens and win. A lot of people were looking at Georgia. And I know it might be crazy to hear that because Alabama just keeps winning and winning against the Dogs. But didn't that snap like a home win streak for Georgia going back to like 2019? I mean, it happened. They got it done. So that's really all I have to say on Alabama's side of things. They just, the defense showed up when it mattered, and offense was able to put big plays on the field.
For sure. They found a way to get it done and stepped up at the end to hold off the comeback. It's kind of, again, the one team that when Georgia sort of had that second half surge, they found a way to stop them. We'll take a little bit of a closer look at the Bulldogs. Offensively, 32.5 points per game, and we have seen that in conference play as well. They 41 on Tennessee, 35 on Kentucky, which is not impressive, but it's Kentucky. 43 on Ole Miss, 24 on Florida, 20 on Auburn. So I mean, against the better defenses, obviously, 21 on Alabama, not been as much, but they've taken advantage of teams that have struggled defensively for sure. Been able to find ways to put quite a few points on the board. They have easily been at their best when they've been able to run the football effectively. On the season, averaging 184 yards. It's been a bit up and down, their rushing attack. But really, it was only the Auburn game is kind of the only one time that they really didn't run the ball all that well. Florida held them in check mostly. But they've had a few guys step up. Chauncey Bowens, as a freshman, has really impressed. He's leading the way with 446 yards, 5.7 a carry, 5 touchdowns. Has really had some big games these last few weeks. Nate Frazier is sort of the guy that has been established there. 394 and 2 touchdowns, but it has not been a big runner for them in terms of high yard per carry, just sort of been a guy just sort of churning up yards. Stockton, is a part of the run game. 290 yards, over 4 yards a carry, 7 touchdowns. So that is a threat dealing with his legs. Not the explosive runner of, you just saw it with Taylor Green and having to deal with him. It's not quite the same situation there, but a guy who, especially down in the red zone, can get involved and you have to think about. So they've got talent in the backfield. It's not any one-man show, but they've got guys who can go. And an offensive line that does a pretty good job of blocking it up front. In the passing game, Stockton, you kind of talked about, he's not been like crazy overly impressive, but he's just been solid. He's completing 70% of his passes, 222 yards a game, 12 touchdowns. He's only thrown 2 picks. Under 8 yards per attempt. It's not been pushing the ball down the field. He's had a couple of the big throws. I know everybody remembers the big 4th down conversion against Tennessee late in that game that goes for a touchdown. He can push the ball down the field and can be accurate, but mostly it's a lot of underneath passing, kind of getting the ball to guys in space. That's sort of their idea is we're just going to work our way methodically down the field, and they do it really well. And, so a lot of that comes down to being able to get run after catch. And Zach Branch at receiver is one of the best guys in the country at doing that. Explosive player in the slot, 45 catches for 474 and 2 touchdowns to lead the way, and has really emerged over these last few weeks, especially. You look at the first, 5 games of the season, his highest total was 5 catches for 69 yards. The last 3 games, 9 for 57, 8 for 71, and then 10 for 112 against Florida, coming off the best game of his season. Really impressive year for him. To this point, and has become a bigger and bigger weapon. That's someone that, playing in the slot, that means state safeties and are going to have to step up because obviously Kelly Jones is going to be on the outside. So, we'll see. Jerron Manning, don't know if he's going to be back in this game or not. You had a good game out of Isaac Smith against Arkansas. Going to need a good performance out of those guys once again. Brylan Lanier, I think, would be someone that you would expect to play a lot of coverage against Zach Branch as sort of one of your nickel guys. They're going to have to deal with him quite a bit. They're going to have to handle him. Colby Young, it's sort of been the other guy. He got hurt against Ole Miss and missed last week. One of their more big play receivers down the field. Probably not going to play against State. We'll see on the injury report when that does come out in a couple of days. Dylan Bell is a guy they've had around, kind of just a consistent, solid player for them. London Humphreys has emerged a little bit. And look, they've got good tight ends, right? Oscar Delp, Lawson Lucky, really good players, even if they're not getting featured quite as much as they probably like. Noah Thomas is another guy to watch for. He was supposed to be a big transfer for them this year in the receiving corps. Hasn't really done much of anything, but he did have a 22-yard touchdown last week against Florida. So could see his role expand a little bit more. They've got a good collection of weapons. Maybe not a ton of star power, but this is probably as good a top-to-bottom skill group as Georgia's had in a long time. This is an offense that can be effective. Now, they don't hit a ton of big plays. It's not that they're all that flashy in what they do, but they're excellent on third downs, convert at about 47% clip. Really it's more solid, but they're good on third down. They're excellent in the red zone. On the season, they're scoring 88% in the red zone with a 76% touchdown rate. Both really good, both towards the top of the SEC. Again, they're very much more methodical with what they do offensively, but they find ways to punch it in the end zone. If you're Mississippi State, I think a lot of it is, can you hold in the red zone? Can you get those key stops? They don't give up a ton of pressure, right? It's nothing sexy, but it's finding ways to It's they're just a team that is consistent and moves forward and finds ways to get it in the end zone. If you're State, I think you're really going to have to step up and find a way to get them off balance as much as possible.
Yeah, I feel like there's obviously been some good things about State's defense this year. We've had some picks, had some sacks, getting after the quarterback and everything. What we're good at, Georgia offensively, in a way I put this, is good at defending the defense. And what Mississippi State's probably going to want to do in this game. I mean, Georgia's offense, man, just the offensive line was an issue going into the season, from what I had heard from like some of the Georgia fans I follow and Georgia experts and everything. It's not pretty solid this year. Obviously, you got the receivers; they've looked really good. You got two guys over 300 yards, one even over 400 yards, and Zachariah Branch, of course. Um, but you can spread the ball out quite a bit. You can stretch the field. That's something that if you're Mississippi State, you need to do a good job of preventing that from happening. Otherwise, Georgia's offense is just going to have a field day with you this week.
Yeah, no, I think limiting them is going to be the big key. I think limiting the ground game is a big part of it. Again, their offense has been at their best when they've been able to run the football, and that's a concern for State, knowing how State's run defenses look. But they're really going to have to be able to limit what Georgia's able to do on the ground. Other side of the ball, we're so used to dominance, and it's just not that this year for Georgia. 19.6 points per game allowed, giving up 309 yards per game. Still very good. Perfectly acceptable numbers in this day and age of college football, and they've found ways to get it done for the most part throughout the season. But they give up 41 to Tennessee. They give up 35 to Ole Miss. Now, those are really the two games. Other than that, they've played pretty strong defensively and done more than enough. But it's interesting that the two teams that run offenses that are similar to Mississippi State were able to have a lot of success in terms of putting points on the board. And obviously Alabama in the first half had little issue being able to move the football against Georgia. Now, look, this team is great at defending the run. Only giving up 94 rushing yards a game. Really, only one team has run it all that effectively, and it was Auburn. And it was really just one half that Auburn ran it well. And once Kirby adjusted that, the other big thing with Georgia is you look at so many of these games, and it's like the second half adjustments on what they do defensively, where it's like, okay, we're going to get down, and then we'll figure out what you're doing that works, and we're just going to stop it. Tennessee ran for 125, but it was a lot of getting held in check. They didn't give up a lot of big runs. Again, they shut down the Ole Miss run game. Florida was able to have some success on the ground, but that's a really good offensive line, really good running back, but they weren't able to really plow it ahead. So the run game and being able to limit what opponents have done, Georgia's been great at that. Pass defense has been solid as well. It doesn't jump off the page in terms of what they've done to this point. But overall, it's been really solid for them on that side of the ball as well. 215 yards a game allowed, only giving up 6.8 yards per attempt. Completion percentage, 61%. Teams are able to complete it a little bit on them and have some success, but they've been solid. Now, Tennessee hit a ton of big plays. Ty Simpson was really good for Alabama against him. Why am I blanking on his name? Trinidad Chambliss for Ole Miss had a big day through the air, at least in the first three quarters. Kind of fell apart there late. DJ Lagway, I think, left some yards off the field. They hit some big plays in that game, but they also had some opportunities they missed on. There have been opportunities to hit some big plays against the Georgia from here or there. Now, they're pretty good at defending big plays. In fact, that's kind of the biggest thing is they don't give up a lot of them, but some of these teams have managed to find some success. And I think if you're Blake Shapen, it's going to have to be another really efficient day and taking what they give you and marching your way down the field. Because, again, they don't make a lot of they don't give up a ton, even though a few teams have been able to hit some. What's kind of surprising is the pass rush. They're last in the SEC. They only have 8 sacks in the season and 1 sack from a defensive lineman. the 7 sacks from inside linebackers, so not even primary pass rushers. These are guys that they are sending on, blitzes or different pressure looks. They're not getting pressure from their edge guys. They're not getting pressure from the defensive line. It's, Chris Cole, C.J. Allen, Raylan Wilson, who is a really good trio for them of inside linebackers. Those are kind of like the 3 big names on defense for sure, in the front defensive front at least. That's sort of it. You don't have the stud on the defensive line that stands out to this point in the season. Jordan Hall leads with 2 tackles for loss. Christian Miller with 1.5. When you talk about defensive linemen, that is. Like they've not been a dominant group up front in terms of being able to get pressure on quarterbacks and in terms of forcing a lot of negative plays. You look from a pass defense standpoint, Dalen Everett is a good corner for them for sure. KJ Bolden at safety is another good player. Like they've got some talented pieces in the back end. It's Georgia, obviously. Jonel Aguero at nickel. It's a good group, but it's not like dominant. It's not the same big names that we've grown used to when we talk about Georgia in terms of the type of pieces that they have back there. It's just a good, solid group that they're able to play with, and they do enough. And, you can convert third downs against them. They're towards the bottom half of the SEC in terms of third down conversions allowed, where they don't force a lot of turnovers. So it's not a lot of negative plays, not a lot of turnovers. You can move the ball against them decently well between the 20s. But what they do well is hold in the red zone. And looking in the SEC specifically in terms of red zone defense, they are second in the SEC, giving up scores on just 72% of red zone trips. They are a little bit further down when it comes to touchdowns allowed at 59%. But again, once they get to the red zone, they find ways to get off the field. It feels like Georgia is going to let Mississippi State nickel and dime. It's whether or not State can win the red zone battle. I think we'll do the keys to victory on Thursday, as we always do. I think the biggest one is which team wins in the red zone. That determines who wins this game.
Yeah, I mean, not to jump to Thursday too quickly, but I mean, you definitely want to hit the big plays early if you're Mississippi State. I would say because once you hit the red zone, man, I feel like that's where Georgia we have seen this year. That is where they thrive defensively is in the red zone. And not to say that they can't prevent explosive plays, but that has been a weakness for Georgia's secondary is just giving up the big passing plays downfield, or maybe if you have the right O line, I mean, you could give up a big run too. So I don't know. There's a lot to dive into as far as the Georgia defense versus the Mississippi State offense. I think it's going to be a fun matchup to watch. Obviously we got our struggles, but the fact that this is not the 21, 22, even I thought the 2023 defense, or even well, let me say that I thought last year's Georgia defense was pretty solid. 2023, you could kind of see them take some steps back a little bit, but it's it's new, but not so much improved for Georgia defensively right now.
Yeah, but look, as we keep talking about, they find ways to win. And as I mentioned, the other big thing is it's like Kirby has done a really good job of understanding I don't have the same dominant players that I once did. I don't have the same depth that I once did, but I've got a good group, obviously a very talented group. Look, a bunch of those guys in that Georgia defense are going to go be playing on Sundays. I'm sure several of them will be high round picks. It's not like Georgia doesn't have talent anymore. It's just not the same as what they had a few years ago. That's part of the impact of the transfer portal right there is sort of the balancing out of where players are going. But what he has done really well is they've identified what this team is good at. Like, hey, getting pass rush, making a bunch of negative plays, that's not what this team is good at. What we're going to be good at is we're not going to give up the big plays, and we're going to be outstanding in the red zone, and we're going to do a great job of making adjustments in the second half. So even if a team gets up on us early, okay, we figured out what they're doing. Now we can stop them. Honestly, it's a pretty dang good coaching job from Kirby and Glenn Schumann. They have the defense performing as well as they have to this point. So it's going to be a big test for Mississippi State for sure. But look, they went up against a great defense in Texas and had opportunities in that game and put a lot of points on the board, moved the ball well until they didn't at the end. But, against Florida, a very good defense on the road. And I know you only scored 21 points in that game, but State had a bunch of yards and State left a lot of points off the board with some of their missed opportunities. State has actually done pretty well against some of these better defenses that seem to this point. I'm sure Jeff Levy will have a good game plan in place, and it's going to come down to can you execute in those key moments. And whoever makes the bigger plays in those bigger moments will be who ultimately wins this football game. I know it's very basic, unimpressive analysis, but I think it just holds so true for Mississippi State this year.